Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayet. In this session we'll be discussing from the 40th verse of the 5th chapter of the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. This is the last verse in this chapter. Tvam api adabhrashruta vishrutam vibho samapyate yena vidam bubhutsitam prakhyahi dukkhair muhur arditatmanam sanklesha nirvanam ushanti nanyatha. The meaning of this verse is: please therefore describe the Almighty Lord's activities which you have learned by your vast knowledge of the Vedas, for that will satisfy the hankerings of great learned men and at the same time mitigate the miseries of the masses of common people who are always suffering from material pangs. Indeed, there is no other way to get out of such miseries. So this verse spoken by Narad Muni to Vyasadeva is the conclusion of this chapter. The chapter title is Narada's Instructions on Srimad Bhagavatam. And Narad Muni has sufficiently justified why Vyasadeva should compile the Srimad Bhagavatam, the exclusive literature describing the glories of Krishna, especially Krishna's activities. The conception of the absolute truth as the supreme person is important to understand that person means activities. Impersonal, there is no activity. Impersonal, there are no qualities. Impersonal, there are no names, forms. There is no paraphernalia. There is no variety. There is no variegatedness. All this variety, names, forms, qualities, pastimes, activities, everything, paraphernalia, devotees, relationships, everything is possible only if we try to understand the absolute truth's feature as the supreme person, Bhagavan. That's why Bhagavata. So, here Narad Muni's conclusion is that for helping people get out of the suffering from material pangs, the easiest way is to widely broadcast the glories, transcendental glories of the Supreme Lord's activities. His activities are extraordinary. None of his activities are ordinary. None of his activities are ordinary. So that is Narad Muni's instruction to Vyasadeva. Now, Srila Prabhupada very nicely explains in the purport that Narad Muni is instructing Vyasadeva to compile the Bhagavatam for the good of all classes of people of the entire world. So Srila Prabhupada says, according to the Bhagavad Gita analysis, there are 4 classes of good men and 4 classes of bad men also in this world. Who are the 4 classes of good men? First of all, the description of the 4 classes of good men. The 4 classes of good men acknowledge the authority of the Almighty God, of the Supreme Lord, and therefore such good men fall under 4 classes. The first class of good men are those who are in difficulty. The second class of good men are those who are in need of money. The third class of good men are those who are advanced in knowledge. And the fourth class of good men are those who are inquisitive to know more and more about God. All these 4 classes of men intuitively take shelter of the Lord because they acknowledge the authority of the Almighty Supreme Lord. Now, Narada is instructing Vyasadeva to broadcast the transcendental knowledge of God in terms of the vast Vedic knowledge which he has already attained. If you remember the beginning of the 4th chapter, it was described Vyasadeva, he first of all put the Vedas in writing, and he divided the Vedas into 4, and then he further summarized the Vedas. He explained the Vedas for less intelligent class of people in an easily understandable way by presenting the Mahabharata. Like that, so much work he did, but he's still feeling a vacuum in his heart. So, he is vastly learned, but even that vast learning, if it is not utilized for specifically describing the transcendental activities of the personality of Godhead, until then, nobody can have full satisfaction in the heart, including those who are learned in the Vedas. Just like Vyasadeva himself, he is not feeling satisfaction in his heart. He is fully learned in the Vedas, because he has not described the transcendental glories of the activities of the Supreme Lord. Now, as far as the 4 classes of bad men are concerned, they are also described in the Bhagavad Gita. The first category of bad men that are described, those who are simply addicted to the mode of progressive fruitive work. Fruitive work means they have to do some work in which they get some results for their material enjoyment, material pleasure, material gain. That is called fruitive work. So, there are people who are addicted to progressive fruitive work, and they keep on doing this, and as a result they are subjected to the accompanying miseries. Nothing in this material world, any material work done, is always accompanied by miseries. You cannot say, I'll do something and I want only pleasure. No, not possible. Always there is pleasure and pain, or enjoyment and suffering. Sukha, dukkha are 2 sides of the same coin. 2 sides of the same coin. Material activity, fruitive activity. So, this is the first class of bad men. The second class of bad men are those who are simply addicted to vicious work, sinful activities. For what? For sense gratification, for sense satisfaction. And naturally they suffer the consequences because they are outright engaging in sinful activity. They have to suffer. Sooner or later they have to suffer. And the third class of bad men are those who are materially advanced in knowledge, but they suffer in spite of being advanced in knowledge. They suffer because they do not have the sense to acknowledge the authority of the Almighty Supreme Lord. So what happens? The effect of their knowledge is stolen away by the illusory energy. Maya apahrta jnana. And the fourth class of bad men, those who are known as atheists, and who therefore purposely hate the very name of God, although they are always in difficulty. It is natural for somebody who is in difficulty to take shelter of God. But these people, because they have developed a hatred for God with a misunderstanding that God is their enemy, or God is against them, or God is not in their favor, or God is partial to somebody who is their enemy. All kinds of misconception, wrong conceptions, misunderstanding. So they are always in difficulty because they engage in sinful activities one after another, and they continuously suffer. Still they will never surrender to God. So Narada is advising Vyasadeva, you please describe the glories of the Supreme Lord to do good to all 8 classes of men, both good and bad. See, this is the vision of the Acharya. This is the vision of the pure devotee. A pure devotee is not thinking, let me try to do good to some good people. No, he is thinking of doing good to all suffering people. All types of people who are suffering material miseries, whether they are good men or bad men. So please understand, in this world, other than devotees of the Supreme Lord, everyone else can be classified into these 8 classes of good and bad men. This is analysis of the Gita. Chaturvidha bhajante mam jana sukrutino arjuna. And namam dushkrutino moodha prapadyante naradhama mayaya pahrita jnana asuram bhavamashrita. So, if people are not devotees of the Supreme Lord in this world, then they are either fruitive workers who perform pious activities, or they are sinful people who simply don't care for any pious activities, and they simply do all kinds of sinful activities. So for doing good to all 8 classes of men, Narada is advising Vyasadeva, kindly compile the Bhagavatam, in which you exclusively describe the transcendental glories of the Supreme Lord, especially by describing his extraordinary activity. So the conclusion is, Srimad Bhagavatam is therefore not meant for any particular class of men or any particular section of society. No, it is meant for the sincere soul who actually wants his own welfare and peace of mind. Simply by hearing Bhagavatam, the extraordinary activities of the transcendental Supreme Lord, one can become free from all material miseries. One can become peaceful in the mind. One can become situated transcendentally above the 3 gunas, no more victimized by the 3 modes. So that is what is Bhagavatam. Hare Krishna. I'll stop here. Thank you very much.